Well, good morning, everyone. I know that you're into your journey with the body balance and drops, and I know you're taking them right 3 times a day, good sublingual absorption. But this morning, we have our top doctor on board with us, Dr. Ray Strand from South Dakota. At the ripe old age of almost 80 years old, still looks like he's 35 because he's lived the life. But Dr. Strand, we know that it's more than just the drops. It's all encompassing. It's what we put in our mouth, it's what we don't put in our mouth, it's our movement, it's taking the drops correctly, and probably some other supplementation too. Would you mind walking us through the whole process to give ourselves the best chance for longevity?
Well, I certainly will, Todd. Thank you very much. And I think I can share my screen hopefully here, and we'll get started here, and we'll get this going, and I'll get it started from the beginning. And what I want to share today is kind of my journey through all this, Todd. I started back in 1995, really studying this. Now that kind of dates me too, but I spent 3 years researching this, which led to the writing of my book, Healthy for Life. And even though it's an older book and I published in 2002, it really has not changed. The principles and everything I share in that book are still up to date. And I want to kind of go over my journey and share it with you because what I was seeing in my medical practice were people coming into me all the time trying to lose weight. That was always the incentive, the reason they were concerned because they had tried 3 or 4 different diets. If they were able to lose any weight, they'd either quickly put it back on or they couldn't lose. And it was very frustrating for them and myself. And I started to really research this, and I found out that uh, it really was something that we needed to pay attention to because I'm into health, it's not just weight loss. And what it really became very obvious to me is the way we live, the way we eat, our lifestyles is the main risk factor for the type of chronic disease I would be treating my patients in the future in my medical practice. And so you have to understand that it's our lifestyle that leads to a lot of the complications and problems that we have. And just listing a few here, heart disease is probably number one. And beyond that, high blood pressure, strokes, cancer, diabetes is really the critical one, and osteoporosis. So, what I had to do was really guide my patients into understanding that we need to firmly establish healthy lifestyles that protect us. So, one of the things that came up early on was that we had been working with a 1901 theory about how fast sugars are absorbed from our food. And this was a theory. I want to underline that. But it was simple sugar versus complex carbohydrates. And the thing you have to understand is carbohydrates are simply long chains of sugar that the body is able to break down and absorb. And of course, this theory thought that the shorter that chain of sugar, or simple glucose or table sugar, would be broken down quicker and raise our blood sugar faster than complex carbohydrates. And so this theory had been out there. This is what even today our registered dietitians in the US are basing everything on. Now, Canada is further ahead, the rest of the world, I travel all over, and they kind of look at Dr. David Jenkins out of the University of Toronto, who said, I'm going to challenge this theory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it. And what I'm going to do is actually give my patients subjects a particular carbohydrate and actually measure the rise in their blood sugar and look at it and just see what happens. So during this, he developed a concept of glycemic index. And so what you have to realize is that the glycemic index values of representative foods, he gave glucose a glycemic index of 100. But then look at, I'm going to just point out some things here. Let me just get my little laser pointer. But you see the baked potato here had a glycemic index of 85, cornflakes 84. You could take all the rices and they're in the 80s. All cereals are in the 80s. Whole wheat bread was 71. White bread was actually 70. But now look at table sugar. That simple sugar that was supposed to be high on the glycemic index is actually below all of these. So we find that bread, flour, pasta, rice, potatoes, all cereals actually spike your blood sugar faster than table sugar. But then you look at whole foods. Look at the peach, it's 28. Sweet cherries are 22. Black beans are 20. So what they did is they found that low glycemic index would be less than 55. A medium glycemic index is 55 to 70. High glycemic is greater than 70. So this really changed the whole concept of how we need to be eating. And so what you realize is that the more man processes foods, the greater it is set up for our body to break that down and spike our blood sugar. For example, you take whole oats and you soak them overnight, it's got kind of a lower glycemic index. If you have slow cooked rolled oats, it's a medium glycemic index. But if you have instant oatmeal, it's high glycemic. You start to understand that the apple is better than applesauce, and applesauce is better than apple juice, and apple juice is better than the sweetened diluted apple juice. So this is a concept, but what I'm trying to teach my patients is you also have to look at a concept which is called the glycemic load. Now, let me explain. This is more important than the glycemic index. And normally we don't talk about it because it's a little bit more involved, but it's really defined as a glycemic index times a gram of carbohydrates that food contains, or the calories, divided by 100. So I'm giving you two examples here. Here's spaghetti. 1 cup of cooked spaghetti, I misspelled that, has a glycemic index of 41. Now, that's less, that would be considered low glycemic index, but it contains 52 grams of carbohydrates. So we do the math. The glycemic load is 41 times 52 divided by 100 equals 21. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that we want a glycemic load less than 10. That's low glycemic load. Between 10 and 20 is moderate. Greater than 20 is high glycemic load. So spaghetti is a high glycemic load. And when you do the studies, the average serving of spaghetti in any Italian restaurant is 8 servings, 8 cups. Not 8 cups, but it's a half a cup that's a serving. But that's how much is there. So you look at it, this is dangerous. Now look at carrots. The glycemic index of carrots is 49. So that's higher than the spaghetti, but it contains only 5 grams of carbohydrates per serving. So we do the math again. Glycemic load is 49 times 5 divided by 100. Oh, you got a glycemic load of 2.4. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't eat carrots fast enough to spike your blood sugar. You just can't do it. And you even take watermelon, has a glycemic index of 72, which is high glycemic, but it doesn't contain many calories either. And so it has a glycemic load of 4, and I can go on and on. So I try to teach my patients not only to understand glycemic index, but glycemic load, because it's critical. Well, then you wonder, you ask yourself, well, why is spiking your blood sugar so dangerous? So I want to show you this simple graph here. The black dotted line is what we call fasting blood sugar. So when you wake in the morning, if you've slept 6 to 8 hours, you wake up, you have a fasting blood sugar, which is there. And since we know that 80% of the carbohydrates we consume in the US and Canada are high glycemic and have a high glycemic load. Let's just say you go out and you have instant oatmeal, or you have cereal, or you have this with orange juice, whatever. The blood sugar rises very, very quickly. Now, the body must control blood sugars in a very narrow range. So this rapidly rising blood sugar not only causes inflammation of your arteries, we call that glycemic stress. In fact, after a high glycemic meal, your arteries go into spasm for 4 to 5 hours after that meal. But this rapidly rising blood sugar also stimulates the release of insulin, and in this case, overstimulates the release of insulin. So when this goes up, the blood insulin levels go sky high to try to control this, and then whoops, it comes down just as fast as it went up. But here's what you got to notice, that it drops below the fasting blood sugar. And so what happens, it goes into the low blood sugar range. We call that hypoglycemia. And if this were to allow to keep going down, 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 you not only get a shaky weakness, not only get mentally confused, diabetics that are on medication can go into an insulin coma. So this low blood sugar stimulates the release of your stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, glucagon. It drives to drive this blood sugar back up to normal. Okay, that's great. However, now you've got these high levels of stress hormones in your circulation, in your blood. So that sets off and has been shown to create hyperphagia, is the name we call it, but it's an uncontrollable hunger. You have to eat again. You have no choice. It's a natural physiologic response from spiking your blood sugar. And so we usually crave another high glycemic meal, and we do this all over again. And so we're doing this over and over again, day in and day out, and we're abusing our insulin. It's kind of like hollering wolf all the time. And you do this month after month, year after year, pretty soon you become less sensitive to your own insulin. And that's what leads us to a problem of insulin resistance. So you have to understand the greatest drug you and I take in or consume are the foods you choose to eat. What we have been calling cravings and all of this addiction is really the normal, natural physiological response to spiking your blood sugar. So certain foods, I say, are addictive and certain foods satisfy. You can't just have one Lay's potato chip. You just, or you know, if you get a, a large French fries or something, you can't leave it. You got to eat them. It's just there. So certain foods addict, but have you ever tried to eat 3 apples in a row or 3 bananas in a row? You can't do it because whole foods satisfy, because it's just the way God made it. So this is very critical. But here's the thing you have to understand when it comes to your health. This insulin resistance or insensitivity to insulin, this graph here is a 25-year graph. This was given to me by a pharmaceutical rep who was selling me a drug. It's called Avandia, which improves insulin sensitivity, but it's a diabetes drug. Now you could go back another 5, 10 years because this doesn't happen overnight. But after 10, 15 years of abusing your insulin by poor lifestyles, the all-American, all-Canadian diet, and inactivity, the orange line is our insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. And we tip over into an abnormal metabolic state, which we now call prediabetes, or now it's called metabolic dysfunction. And we get less and less sensitive to our own insulin. So how does the body respond to that? Well, it responds by increasing insulin production. And as blood insulin levels go up, that fat releasing hormone, glucagon, goes down and becomes more dysfunctional. So here we're talking about body balance, hormone balance. This is what's happening. Our hormones are getting out of balance. So what happens when blood insulin levels go up? Well, we not only gain, insulin is our storage hormone. And so when we have high blood levels of insulin, we're going to be, getting the central weight gain. That's the hallmark sign, expanding waist size. And you'll start to see that our blood pressure goes up. We start to see cholesterols go up, triglycerides, that other fat in the blood goes up. The good cholesterol goes down. But then After 10, 12 years, and we start aging, by the way, about a third faster, our arteries begin aging a third faster than they should early on because of all these changes. But our old body just can't keep making all that insulin. Then eventually insulin levels begin to drop. So insulin production goes down. And then what happens? Oh, here come the blood sugars. And they go up. And we're diagnosing diabetes in my office out in here. So what happens the day I diagnose someone in my medical practice as having type 2 diabetes, this is what we're talking about primarily, 60% already have major cardiovascular disease. In other words, that they're set up for heart attacks and strokes. In fact, our diabetics today, 80% die prematurely from heart attacks and strokes or a cardiovascular event. And so we're not doing anything for that. That was true in 1960, it was true in 2000, it's true in 2025. So this led the American College and the American Association of Endocrinology to get together and say, boy, we need to be treating prediabetes back here as aggressively as we do diabetes, because by the time they become diabetic, it's too late. We haven't changed anything. So that is why I'm trying to teach physicians, everybody, to recognize early insulin resistance, insulin abuse, and that's what I share in my book. You can pretty much see where you stand and treat it back here. Well, they looked at the worldwide medical literature, and what did they decide? Well, they decided, to treat this, it isn't drugs. There's no drugs that can treat this. It's intensive lifestyle changes, and that's critical. And so that's what I found that we needed to teach my patients. Because prediabetes, or the metabolic dysfunction we call it now, there's a constellation of problems, and this was really Dr. Gerald Raven's work out of Stanford back in the mid 1980s, that the central weight gain, which physicians call killer fat, is because it's associated with everything else. So once your blood insulin levels begin to rise and you're out of balance, that's what we call body balance. Your blood pressure's elevated. The good cholesterol drops, the HDL drops, the very bad LDL goes sky high. The other fat in the blood, triglycerides, go through the roof. And so we see triglycerides going up, your HDL cholesterol going down. Well, then I showed you over time, then your blood sugars go up and you're at high risk of developing heart disease. Dr. Raven said that if you have full-blown insulin resistance, your risk of having a heart attack or stroke goes up 20-fold. So this is the more important thing than just cholesterol. It's the triglycerides going up. It's the HDL going down. Well, then we found this central weight gain that you get creates obstructive sleep apnea. We also notice that infertility, the number one cause, is polycystic ovarian disease, which is the result of insulin resistance. But also, we start gaining all this weight, it starts to go into your liver, and it's the cause of fatty liver. So you can see as a physician, it's not just weight gain. Yeah, that's the incentive. A lot of my patients came in to have it done, but I want their health. This is what I wanted. So what I try to teach my patients, if you're not being proactive in trying to protect your health, you are slowly losing your health. In fact, I've written a book or a booklet, talking about the 10 levels of health now that I understand this. But the progression of disease is silent. You don't know it's happening. You don't know if you got early cancer. You don't know if your arteries are hardening. This is just something, the first sign of heart disease over 60% of the time is either a heart attack or sudden death, the first time you know about it, because we as physicians diagnose disease at the last stages. Same thing with cancer. When you have pain from pancreatic cancer, it's already spread throughout your body. That's why they only live about 6 months. So we need to be active and proactive in protecting our health. If you're not, you're slowly losing it. And that's what I'm trying to share. So that leads me to Partner Co's Slenderiiz program is healthy lifestyles that improves insulin sensitivity. So back in the 90s, I said, gee, if it's poor lifestyles that caused all this problem of becoming less sensitive to our own insulin, maybe healthy lifestyles that improve insulin sensitivity is the answer to this problem. Not medication, not drugs. This led to a 4-part comprehensive healthy lifestyle program. Early on, it was a 3-part because I did not have Slenderiiz drops in my medical practice. But I learned that if you eat a healthy diet that does not spike your blood sugar, and I'll explain what that is, define it, I improved insulin sensitivity right away. Also, if I did modest aerobic activity, exercise, not being a superstar, that improved insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. But then there were studies that showed me that if you take nutritional supplementation, optimal levels, and they'd always study one at a time, that you improved insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. Now, if I could get my patients to make just one of these lifestyle changes, didn't matter which one, I saw some improvement. If I could get them to do 2 of the 3, I saw a little more improvement. But if I could get them to do all 3, it was phenomenal. The results I saw back in the 90s, early 2000s was simply phenomenal. Well, these results led to clinical trials using this program through the guidelines of the FDA called an IRB. We did 3 clinical trials using my program. And we had tremendous success. The last one was done at the University of Colorado Medical School. Dr. Holly Wyatt was the endocrinologist that did the study. So we knew the program worked. Well, then enter the Slenderiiz drops, because the hardest thing I had in doing this program in my medical practice was behavioral changes. Lifestyles are hard to change. It's the hardest thing we as physicians have to deal with. Well, enter the Slenderiiz drops. This was great. So let me just kind of go through this. Now, what do I define as a healthy diet? It's learning to eat a healthy diet that contains those good, low glycemic carbohydrates, good fats. There are good and bad fats. Well, there are good carbs and there are bad carbs. And there's good protein and there's bad protein. But it primarily involves eliminating those highly processed grains, bread, flour, rice, cereal, pasta, along with those high glycemic potatoes and obviously sugar. These are the enemies. And so in phase 1, or when you open up your Slenderiiz booklet and you see the food list, you won't see these on there because these are the enemies. These are the dangerous foods. And when I tell my patients about this in my medical practice, many of them will go into a cold shake because they have this carbohydrate addiction. It's as strong of an addiction as alcohol, as some drugs, as nicotine. I mean, it is hard, but you start to do this. You start to eat one meal that doesn't spike your blood sugar. The medical literature shows your blood insulin levels begin to drop. Just one meal. The second meal, it drops further. In fact, in our clinical trials, when we did this, we were able to reduce insulin levels 50%. Well, obviously, then the glucagon levels come up and that's your fat releasing hormone, and they start to do it. But then, and just to add to it, realizing, with all the toxins and everything we're finding in our foods, eating organic whole foods. Whole foods is the key. That's what I try to teach my patients. This is where we want to go to, and I'm not promoting, the Atkins diet or keto diet. I really believe our body needs those good carbohydrates, the good fats, and good protein. But that's the basic philosophy. But also, we need to learn that we need to be active. The only thing the body cannot handle is inactivity. So I encourage my patients, they don't have to be a superstar, a marathon runner or anything. Just build up to 30 minutes of modest aerobic activity 5 days a week, not every day. Our body needs rest. But that could be brisk walking, biking, hiking, swimming, tennis, anything that gets our body moving. And if you haven't done it, just slowly build up. But that's the level that has been shown to significantly improve insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. Well, then you look at it, aerobic activity is the key to improving insulin sensitivity. Now, I'm not against weight resistance training, building muscle, all that, because then you utilize more calories, all of that's fine. But aerobic activity is the key, but you don't have to be a superstar. Well, then I started looking at the nutritional studies, and you got to realize that in medical literature, they study one nutrient at a time. They'll study vitamin E, they'll study vitamin C, magnesium, chromium, selenium, all grapeseed extract, but they study them one at a time. But what I learned is I want all my patients, whether they have insulin resistance or whatever, that they need to be providing all the nutrients, all the essential nutrients to the cell at these optimal or advanced levels that have been shown to provide a health benefit in our medical literature. I define that as cellular nutrition. That is why Partner Co. has the optimals. If you look in my books, I've got 2 pages which define cellular nutrition. Well, that overwhelms my patients. But I said, well, all you have to do is take 2 optimal M's and 3 optimal B's with breakfast and again with your evening meal, and you have cellular nutrition. So I want my patients to be taking nutritional supplementation as part of a healthy lifestyle. Now, my first choice would be the optimals. However, the reason is that it creates synergy. Even though these are studied one at a time, we understand that antioxidants work against different free radicals in different parts of the body. They need the so-called B cofactors, B1, 2, 6, folic acid, to do their job, but they also need the antioxidant minerals to do their job. So if you have all the antioxidants world, but you don't have enough selenium, the glutathione doesn't work. They work together. And the other thing that you find is you have vitamin E uh, and you have vitamin C. The vitamin C replenishes vitamin E, so it can be used over and over and over again. If you put in alpha lipoic acid, it not only replenishes the vitamin E, but also the intracellular glutathione. So what happens is that 1 plus 1 is not 2. It becomes 20, 30, or 40. So by putting them together, you have to understand the concepts of synergy, and that's what we're doing. Now, the other thing you have to realize is that MOA is a wonderful thing to take. And I have patients that just won't take the vitamins. Okay, they want a liquid. So MOA is my choice. Why? Because it contains 35 superfoods. I mean, you can look at this as a short, but not only at these optimal levels of all of the mushrooms, the shiitake, reishi, all of these mushrooms, but look at all of the superfoods that are there. And they're loaded with antioxidants that work together. So here's synergy again. Now, the other one that people look at, now let me just jump ahead here. I'm going to talk about this first. Another one is Tahitian noni juice. That's another one people go to because it provides some of the most potent antioxidants and superfoods known to man. Individuals dealing with insensitivity to their insulin must deal with higher blood sugars that can damage their bodies by attaching to proteins. And what we find, those are called AGEs, or, the other thing is that it increases aging. So the Tahitian noni juice contains high levels of iridoids, and they protect against these advanced glycogen end products. That's what AG. And not only that, it reverses it. So people might consider taking noni juice as a part of cellular nutrition. Now, what I find is what I like to do is look at if they're taking the optimals and they want to add to it, well, consider adding MOA or uh, Tahitian noni juice. Now, if they're taking MOA, then I try to encourage them, well, consider adding the optimals. Or if they're taking noni juice, consider taking the optimals. You put these together, it's like Batman and Robin. But now the fourth stage is Slenderiiz Accelerate. And these homeopathic drops contain 11 different ingredients, but several of these homeopathic ingredients actually improve insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. You know, they talk about releasing fat. Well, what happens, and I'll explain it here, uh, this is important. So now you got a fourth way to improve the underlying problem of all these health issues that I talk about, and that is the Slenderiiz drops. Several of these ingredients suppress your appetite and decrease your cravings for sugars and sweets and overeating. It improves satiety. You feel full quicker. I mean, anybody who's taking these drops knows that. They feel that. But here, this is the problem. The addiction. Carbohydrate addiction is a hard thing to get people through. Now, in 5 to 20 days, people get out of this. But if you spike your blood sugar just one time, the medical literature shows you set off this uncontrollable hunger for 2 to 3 days. So you may be just craving the next day, but you look back, hey, I screwed up the day before. And others increase your metabolism, energy, focus. Others have a calming effect and improve your mood. Well, challenging lifestyles is very, very difficult. But all of these ingredients work synergistically to help balance your body and balance your hormones. So it's a great addition. And that's so what I do also is add the Accelerate, which contains some very important nutritional supplements along with some amazing herbs. The primary nutritional supplement is significant amounts of bioavailable vitamin B12 that improves energy and focus. The biotin improves insulin sensitivity and supports your nails, hair, and skin. Rose hips contains that highest level of the most potent form of vitamin C and help hormonal balance. But what a lot of people don't appreciate, it contains very good doses of ashwagandha and rhodiola, which are tremendous calming herbs that also help our mood, our sleep, and a lot of people notice, man, this has just taken my anxieties away. And so here we have Slenderiiz and Accelerate. And what I have found in my medical practice, what used to take me 12 weeks to accomplish, all of a sudden now I can do in 6 weeks. Or in my diabetics, I just tell them it takes 18 to 24 months to get the full benefit. Now I can get that in around 8 or 9 months. So this is something that you can get things twice as fast. And so what I'd like to do then is share one other thing is Pure Nourish. It's key for success because it's not only a vegetable protein, gluten-free, soy-free, GMO-free, low glycemic index, it's dairy-free. Uh, it is a tremendous way to experience a healthy diet that does not spike your blood sugar. Pure Nourish, I do this every morning. I've done it for the last 15 years. And 2 scoops of water, almond milk, or coconut milk, along with maybe some frozen fruit, giving greens or power boost. Just leave it up to your own imagination. But what happens is in the clinical trials, we used Pure Nourish twice a day. So what we did is they could pick which 2 meals they wanted to replace. It became they got to enjoy the healthy diet, the low glycemic lifestyle very quickly. Then they learned to eat one low glycemic meal and a couple low glycemic snacks. So it was an excellent behavioral modification tool. So if you're jumping into this, consider Pure Nourish as a great way to help you through, especially the early stages. So let me just kind of go back to review. So what we found is that, when you tip over into this metabolic dysfunction, you start to get hormonal imbalance. So blood insulin levels go up. The glucagon, fat releasing hormones go down. But remember the way you eat, your stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol are high. We're totally out of balance. So by combining these healthy lifestyles, diet, exercise, nutritional supplementation, we can improve insulin sensitivity. In the medical trials, within 12 weeks, we dropped blood insulin levels 50%. Many of them, the majority, actually tipped back into a normal metabolic state. And as these came down, blood pressure was healthier. The lipid profile, cholesterols got better. The triglycerides dropped. They got better. Blood sugars improved and they began releasing fat. My patients who did this program said, Dr. Strand, what's so hard about never going hungry, feeling great, having more energy, more focus, and jeepers, seeing I'm losing weight and I'm not even trying, and my health parameters improving. My blood pressure is improving. My lipid profile, my blood sugars. How exciting is that? And I'm not even trying. Why weren't they trying? Because we're not relying on willpower. We're correcting the underlying root cause of all this problem. And you know, all those the problems that come from insulin resistance, you look at that, how many drugs people take for that. And 60% of the medication that is prescribed today has been just to that, the metabolic dysfunction. So anybody who's going to challenge this, and look at it, I want you to consider getting my book, Healthy for Life, which now is on Amazon. You can now get the printed copy. You can get the Kindle property. Just put in Dr. Ray Strand, Healthy for Life. Uh, in the book section, this will come up. I've got them priced really down, but I spent 3 years researching this before I wrote this book, and I detail everything. So, the one thing that I have done as a physician is my patients come to me and says, Dr. Strand, if I'm going to, you know, commit my life to become more proactive in protecting my health and spending my time, my money, my effort, I want to know it's going to be clinically effective. That's why I've done all this for the last 25, 30 years, is I want my patients to know that it's clinically effective. But you've got to understand this. This is the educational part. Now, you got to go through and have support of the team, and that's what's beautiful about what Todd Rowland's done. Other groups have really done it well. The support of the social media has really helped everybody, and the results we're seeing are phenomenal. But this gives you the information, and it's a guideline, and it will affect your health because you'll look at it and say, "Hey, I got that right. I got that. Oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know that." That is really something that you really need to know. So anyway, I wanted to end there. I'll stop sharing uh, my website and turn it back to you. And but hope you enjoyed that.